Greetings viewers, welcome to Shamu's Equal Access Talk Show on Zondex Tv. Tonight you are in the company of a former student leader, a former deputy prime minister in the Republic of Zimbabwe, in the unity government, Professor Arthur Mutambara. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to Cape Town.
Thank you very much for your hospitality.
Yes. Professor, where is Arthur Mutambara?
Well, I'm busy doing a book tour. My view is that we don't do enough documentation. There are lots of people with interesting stories, business people, academics, journalists, politicians, and we don't write enough. So I decided to walk the talk and put pen to paper. Wow. And so I'm busy going around the country, going around the world, talking about my book.
Right. Chasing the elusive Zimbabwe dream. Do you have the Zimbabwe dream?
You know, the Zimbabwean dream is a peaceful, prosperous, and democratic Zimbabwe. If we could get that, a peaceful, prosperous, and democratic Zimbabwe, that's our dream. But what we mean, shared economic development, shared economic prosperity, inclusive democracy, political stability, free and fair elections in our country. And when you look at that, you find that although I'm calling it the Zimbabwean dream, it is actually an African dream. Shared economic prosperity is missing in Nigeria, it is missing in Rwanda, it's missing in South Africa. So we are saying, why don't we get together as Africans and create an environment in our countries where our people are free, where our people have free and fair elections, where our people have shared economic prosperity, where we leverage technology, where we work together as Africans to deliver the African dream.
I agree with you. Wasn't that the dream from 1980? What changed now to now?
I think 1980 was a very important marker insofar as we obtained political independence. But the danger, the problem was that we did not deepen our democracy. The freedom fighters, the liberators became dictators, they became oppressors, where now there was no longer freedom of expression, freedom of association. In the 90s, in the 2000s, our elections are rigged, our elections are not free and fair. So we lost the essence of political independence. But more importantly, 1980, just like 1994 in South Africa, was about political independence. What about economic empowerment, economic independence? So economic prosperity has been very elusive. But in Zimbabwe, it has gone worse because even the political rights, even the democratic rights are now elusive. And so in addition to lack of economic empowerment, lack of economic independence, our people now have no freedom of expression, have no freedom of association. That is what is elusive.
Right. We'll get to that again. Let's touch about your student activism from 1983. When I read some of the experts, it was quite hectic, some of the things that you went through. What is the difference now when you're a student activist then and now? You were more active there, you sided with the public sometimes when the public voiced their concerns. It's not happening these days. What's happening?
Right. When we were younger in the 80s, you find that actually we're overly impressed by ZANU-PF, we're overly impressed by the one-party state. We wanted socialism. So the book is about growth. The book is about transformation, the journey and odyssey of ideas. You see in the early years, in the 80s, University of Zimbabwe, when we started, we were very Pan-Africanist, we were very socialist. But then we realized that these guys in ZANU-PF in government were corrupt. So we started challenging corruption, we started going against one-party state and demanding an open society. So there is growth from an affinity for the one-party state, growth from an affinity for socialism, which is, championed by ZANU-PF, to saying, look, these guys are corrupt, there's corruption in the country, they're undemocratic, we don't want one-party state anymore. And then we progress on to now opposing the one-party state. In the same book you find that. Then of course from there I go to Oxford, I go to the US. So we were what we used to call the voice of the voiceless. There was no opposition party in Zimbabwe. So the students and the labor movement were the de facto opposition in the country. Now it's opened up now. There's several political parties in the country. The students are still part of the equation, but it's a more open society in terms of struggle. But the oppression and repression is still in place. I'm doing a different type of struggle now. I'm supportive of the struggle in Zimbabwe. I was in government. Now I'm saying, in addition to fighting, in addition to making a difference, why don't we document our experiences? Why don't we write? There's no writing culture in Africa. Think about Mugabe. You don't have to like him, but he's been there from 1960. That's 57 years at the front seat of the politics of our country. But there's not even a single document, pamphlet, a book that he has written by him. You know, in America, George Bush Sr. wrote, Reagan wrote, Obama has written, he's still writing, George Bush Jr. has written, Blair has written, Thatcher had 3 books. The writing culture, every successful civilization has writers and readers.
Yes.
You can't succeed if you don't document. So my contribution at the moment is to say, why don't I walk the talk and somehow put together the views of my generation when we were students, and then when we were in the political parties, when we were in government. Documentation is part of the struggle.
It's very important, yes. One of the experts also in your book was that you authored an anti-corruption document by then in the 80s, and we're still talking about corruption now, and no action has been ever taken, and corruption is still growing. What gave you the courage to confront the President of the Republic then as a student leader and tell him that you do not agree with the one-party state?
It shows that our generation had vision. Our generation consisted of visionaries, people like Tendai Biti, Gwisai, Lavo Maduku, with foresight. People like Makamuri, who was a lecturer, Guto was then eventually expelled from Zimbabwe. We had foreseen that these guys were crooks. You know, by the time 88, 89, when we were opposing ZANU-PF, many people now were making noises about ZANU-PF. We were pro-ZANU-PF, we were in the regime, but we were in opposition because we had seen that there was no commitment to a national agenda. There was no commitment to democracy. There was no commitment to using national resources to benefit the people. And so I would say our generation had foresight. Now, why hasn't that changed? It's because there's not been a change in government. This regime has been there for 37 years. Mugabe has been in charge of the country for 37 years, doing the same things. And hence, as a result, whatever efforts have been deployed to address corruption, to address democratic demands, have not been sincere efforts, and hence we've not had a proper outcome. So the struggle continues.
The struggle continues.
Yes.
I want to understand your state of mind, where it was when you actually went face to face with the President of the Republic.
Yeah, well, you see, I think that's the beauty of youth. We're very idealistic and we're not impressed by him anymore. And you can see, we discussed in the book, there were several confrontations where we told him off. I remember one instance is when we met during a graduation ceremony and he wanted to talk about Fort Hare. And I was like, I don't want to talk about 40, I want to talk about Zimbabwe. We are completely against one party state by any means necessary. And then he said, if you take such strong views, we're going to be dismissive of your ideas. We said, we've already dismissed you. So it doesn't matter whether you dismiss us or not. Anyway, I'm emphasizing the fact that as young people, we are idealistic, as young people, we're driven, as young people, we believed that we have a role to play to be the voice of the voiceless. We have a role to play as a barometer of social consciousness in the country. And so we played that role very effectively. Why? Because there was no effective opposition party in the country. The labor movement and the students were the opposition then.
Right. 15 students were just away from the university, and you were not, you ended up at the Oxford University.
That's when you need to read the book. That's not correct.
Okay,
what happened in 88? They shut down the students. They withdrew the grants from the students.
Okay.
But they couldn't withdraw my grant because I was on Anglo-American scholarship.
Right.
And they tried to influence Anglo to withdraw the scholarship, and they refused. Then after that, in 89, we actually were locked up. They closed down the university, and we were locked up. And then after 6 weeks, it was reopened. We went back to school. Everyone went back to school. Then I graduated, and then did very well, and then I got a scholarship to go to Oxford. That's another message, by the way, from the book. First and foremost, read the book to get the facts right. Secondly, one message we're pushing to young people is don't make noises, don't be a radical and not do well in school. Yes to radical confrontation, yes to political activism, but at the same time, do well in school. We need a balance between social responsibility and academic excellence. So I did both. That's why I was able to win a scholarship to go to Oxford. I wasn't given a scholarship by ZANU. I won the scholarship on merit and also because I was a leader. Then I got an opportunity to go to Oxford through political activism and academic excellence. So young people must make a difference, young people must be active, but young people must also be entrepreneurs. They must be thinkers. They must be doing well. They must get their degrees. Yes, fees must fall, but don't fail in your exams.
Don't fail in your exams.
The fees must fall. You must pass. You must do well. You must get a distinction.
It's very important. Very important.
Because when you are in the world, we're looking for skills. We're looking for impact. We're looking for technocratic capacity. And we want people who can make a difference, and that comes from academic excellence. But at the same time, you must be conscious. You must know your history. You must know the societal needs. So consciousness is very important. Academic excellence is also very important.
You talk about dealing with racism when you're in the US, when you did a presentation, right? How did that go about?
Yes, this is another thing that we are saying to young people. No matter how smart you are, no matter how able you are, in the world there's always racism. They always second guess you. And sometimes you have to do much better than your white counterparts. Because as a black person, as an African, people always devalue or underestimate your capacity. So we're able to do very well, but sometimes we have to work harder, 2 times harder than the other people. But when you succeed, when you do very well, they acknowledge it. But you are never given the benefit of the doubt. You have to prove yourself all the time.
That's right.
But it's okay.
Yeah. Talk about your associate professors in the America, working for NASA, MIT, and all that stuff.
Now, you see, what you need to do as young people and as academics coming up, you've got to work hard, get that master's, do the dissertation, work hard, get that PhD, do the research, and beyond that, do more research and publish. Publish your articles, publish your journals, publish your books, and make an unequivocal contribution to knowledge, extend the frontiers of knowledge. So it was very fascinating to be in the US system. It's a big economy, unlike the UK. I didn't have a doctorate in England, but my further work was done in the US. The space program, MIT, Florida State. These were institutions that gave me an opportunity to apply some of the things I did in my PhD work. And then that's where I did my 2 books. The one which is a research book used by PhD students and researchers, and the other one which is used to teach about 3 classes. In Japan, in the US, in America, and in Africa. But again, at the same time in America, I was active in the black communities, making speeches at Harvard, at Stanford, at Morehouse, at Tennessee State, again advancing the cause of black America, advancing the cause of Africans, and making sure that I make a contribution to society, while at the same time doing well academically and pushing the agenda.
Unemployment rate is quite high in Zimbabwe at the moment, or well, maybe in Africa to say. Do you think universities and schools are taking measures to actually teach entrepreneurship rather than just academic study? Because if you look at it, we're growing up, your mother telling you whether you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a nurse, or you're going to be a teacher, but never you're going to be a businessman.
In fact, very important question. We need a revolution in our educational system. Our educational system is very British, exam-based. How do I get a first class? How do I get to master's? Whereas in America, the American system, there's emphasis on entrepreneurship. There's emphasis on innovation. A student will ask you, Professor, can I get a patent out of this? Professor, can I commercialize this? Professor, can I form a company out of my work? The idea in America is to emphasize the creation of jobs. Don't go to school to get employed. Go to school to create jobs. School education should be a means to an end. Entrepreneurship, innovation, patents, forming companies, commercializing ideas. That's the genius of the American system. And so I would want to see some changes in the way we do education in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, because we're very British in our approach, very exam-centered, creating workers. We want to create employers. We want to create businesses. You know, Bill Gates is a good example. I actually had an opportunity to ask him when I was at Davos, that how did you take a risk? You were studying physics at Harvard, in your second year you dropped out. How did you do that? Because I said to him, in my village, if I did that, the entire village will stone me to say, how dare you get a chance to go to Oxford and then you drop out. Anyway, he said, it wasn't very risky. I cut a deal with my professors. They said to Bill Gates, look, you are studying physics, you're in your second year, you have a good idea. Go out there and form a company. Go out there and be an entrepreneur. If it succeeds, don't come back. Just be a baller. But if you run into trouble, if there are problems, come back to Harvard. We'll work with you to get your degree.
Right.
Can you imagine? That's very flexible. That's very creative of the professors in America. They allowed Bill Gates to leave Harvard to go and form his company. And if he went into trouble, if he had problems, they were prepared to welcome him back. We don't do that in the system here. Once you drop out, you're gone. Once you fail, you're gone. So we need some flexibility in the educational system in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, to say the smartest student, the best student in law, in economics, in physics, if they have a good idea, allow them to leave the university, allow them to drop out. And if they have problems, get them back. That way,
explore their dream.
So entrepreneurship must be respected. That's why you have so many high school dropouts, university dropouts in America who have formed companies. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, so many entrepreneurs who actually dropped out of. And now they employ graduates. So we tend to frown on dropping out of school. We shouldn't. Sometimes it's a good idea to drop out. So education must be a means to an end, not an end in itself. More so when you are educated with an MBA, with a BA, with a BSc, with a PhD, don't go around looking for jobs. Create jobs. We need job creators, not workers.
Right. Are you going to run for president one day?
Well, I keep my options open. I'm a Zimbabwean. For now, I'm concentrating on writing. I'm concentrating on documentation. I'm concentrating on acquiring technocratic capacity. But the sky is the limit. I keep my options open as a Zimbabwean.
Thank you. Okay, preempt, second edition coming.
Right, second edition will now cover the politics. In book one, we're going from 1983 to 2002. In book two, we're coming from 2003 to 2009. All the political interventions, the MDC stories, the elections, the negotiations, and leading to the formation of the inclusive.
Is it going to be a telltale or
no holds barred? No holds barred.
Wow, I can't wait for book two.
No holds barred. It's coming. And so it's coming, and then we'll speak after that.
Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
There you have it. Take entrepreneurship seriously. We need people that create employment. If you are an MBA student, you want to drop out and go and pursue your dream. If it doesn't work, come back to the studies and pursue your studies again. I'm chatting to Professor Arthur Mutambara. He's got his book today, In Search of the Elusive Zimbabwean Dream. Right? Thank you.